Well, here we are again today with Michael Sussman right here in the candidate's corner. And how's it going, Michael? How are we doing?
Quite a week. Quite
Boy.
a week.
Uh-huh.
Well, the deadline for our petitions for the Comptroller came and went this week. We got 140 people out in the streets gathering petition signatures, and they gathered about 4,500 signatures.
Wow.
The only problem is we needed 6,250 or more.
Wow.
But when I looked at the signatures, I saw people from all over the county, people of every political party, and those who gathered the petitions too represented quite a cross-section of our population. And I recognize that we have a tremendous momentum really to create a county controller.
Great.
And of course this election now becomes about that, because the way we can now make it happen is through a legislature that will vote for it, and I of course will sign it as county executive, and we can make it happen very quickly.
There you go.
And have a referendum. We still need a referendum, but the point would be we'd have the referendum, and I believe that it would overwhelmingly pass. The other thing that happened is at the Labor Day party, which was given by organized labor in Poughkeepsie, I happened to meet the newly elected controller of Dutchess County, which just started the office a year ago.
Wow.
And told me that he's already having a remarkable success in stilling county finances and saving money for taxpayers. And he was really excited about the idea that Orange County might follow suit, because he
Boy.
felt it would be absolutely, given what he knows about our county, something that we would be able to model after what he's doing. So I was really kind of excited at both of those things. I know people were a bit disappointed we didn't get it on the ballot, so was I, but it really makes for a more clear choice now with the candidates.
Okay.
I stand very clearly in favor of a county controller. My opponent doesn't want the oversight, which he's made very clear, and his legislative party, like in the Trump universe, follows him. They're not going to deviate at all. None of them will support it because they're very protective of Stevie Wonder. So that's where we are. And in that sense, I thought it was a good week. I thought we got clarity, and now we know where we stand. And the other thing that happened this week was we had a county legislative meeting last evening. About 60 people came to the meeting, which is about 54 more than usually come to their 3 p.m. meetings.
Oh, right, exactly.
And almost all the people who came were people who were concerned about the direction of the county, and 10 or 12 spoke. And their themes were really instructive, and I listened very carefully to those themes. 3 people came who were disabled, and they spoke about how they have to rely on paratransport, which is unreliable, doesn't get them from here to there in any timely manner, and often will leave them at a store, for instance, and not come back to get them.
Wow.
One of the individuals recounted having wheeling 2 miles through the streets of Newburgh because had no other way of transport. There's no bus, the paratransport wasn't available, so what were they supposed to do? A woman explained the story. It was quite moving. And the county legislators sit there, stone-faced, no response to any of this, no programmatic response. Then we had people getting up and speaking, of course, about ICE and the increasing involvement of our sheriff's department with ICE in masked raids, wherever they may be. Now there was a discussion of a 19-year-old woman who was taken from her 1-year-old child and is in Louisiana for the last 2 months. This is from Newburgh. The 1-year-old child is basically orphaned because her mother is nowhere to be found. And I thought the public responded with aghast at these things, but again, the legislators had no response whatsoever. And then there were people speaking about Valley View. And Valley View as a facility has a tremendous need for improvement of services. And the people who have relatives there were explaining that. And again, just nobody says anything. It's just like you're speaking into the wind, except the audience is clearly listening, and I was certainly listening. So it was fascinating to me. A lot of these are the same issues that we've been talking about. And it's not gratified to hear that people are really speaking about these issues because this is their life experience. This is of concern to them.
Did any of this register, was Newhouse there?
No, Mr. Newhouse, I met with Mr. Newhouse briefly as he was leaving the building, and it was announced he had to go to some other meeting, but he's not been at any of the legislative meetings I've been at. I've been at 4 of them in the last few months. He hasn't been at one of the meetings. So,
you don't think he's ducking you, do you, Mike?
I don't think he's ducking me. I think he's just ducking his responsibilities, period. And it's important, honestly, that the county executive doesn't have his or her own meetings. So the legislative meetings are meetings in which the leadership of the county, 21 legislators are there, and they have to deal supposedly with the problems and issues of the county. But the other thing that happened at the meeting last night, which was very interesting, is James Skoufis, our state senator, recently successfully sponsored legislation which now will have elections for county office held the same year as presidential elections.
Okay.
So we're not going to have these odd year elections where, it's difficult to get people to come out to vote. The turnout is much less. So the Republicans yesterday, by a 15-vote to 5-vote majority, agreed to join a federal lawsuit to try to block this. A state lawsuit did not succeed. Now they joined. They were part of that. Now they agreed to spend an unknown amount of money to participate in this federal lawsuit. Now that's the only issue that sparked really a debate last night. And to their credit, Genesis Ramos, Kevin Lujan, and others spoke very well about the need for other priorities in the county than to spend our money in this kind of a lawsuit. But the Republicans were very, very upset, very clearly, that there might be elections the same time as a presidential election.
Wow.
And even though Donald Trump carried this county by 10 percentage points.
Well, that's not going to happen again.
Well, it may not, I agree, but he's not running again, I hope. But the point remains that they're very, very concerned about the emerging Democratic vote in this county, which they know, in terms of numbers, is way higher registered voters than theirs. They know that if Democrats come out, which is more likely in a presidential year, they'll be swamped, could be swamped. So they were vociferous and universal in their support for the litigation.
Yeah, okay.
So I thought that was another interesting thing that's going on. Now, in terms of news that is coming, that's very important. And I think we did discuss this, but we might not have. Amazon has resurfaced, and their resurfacing is now coming to fruition this coming week. So I'm sponsoring a major public meeting at the Mount Carmel Parish Center, which is at 100 Euclid Avenue in Middletown, quite near where we're on the border.
Mm-hmm.
It's a large parish center. On Monday at 7 o'clock. This is September 8th. The purpose of this is to give people an opportunity to learn more about the Amazon issue and how it may very well affect their community. As you know, it's a 3.25 million square foot warehouse.
Huge.
The 5th largest in the United States. And Amazon's record with regard to health and safety of its workers, and certainly its union busting, are well known, at least to people who follow this. We want to make sure people really understand what we're getting deeper into in this county, apart from all the environmental impacts that have been, again, well chronicled. They caused the Zoning Board of Appeals to deny this, but now they're coming and trying to do an end run of the Zoning Board of Appeals and go to the Planning Board almost as if it's the appellate authority, when that's, excuse the expression, ass backwards.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And the appellate authority is really the Zoning Board of Appeals, not the Planning Board. So I'll be giving public discussion of all this on Monday, and then Wednesday.
What time is that again?
7 o'clock at the Parish Center at 100 Euclid in Middletown.
Okay.
That's the Mount Carmel, and we really appreciate Mount Carmel stepping forward and letting us use their parish center, because I do expect a large crowd. And then 2 nights later, the Planning Board is having its meeting, where it's a public hearing to discuss the application to basically overrule the ZBA, which I think is unlawful for reasons I'll go into in great length on Monday. But I do want people to have an opportunity to come, and we're trying in whatever ways we can to publicize that so people understand that it's happening.
Well, we'll make sure that we get it out there too,
Thank
for sure.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. And then we had our party last Sunday.
How great was that?
You were out there singing Frank
was.
Sinatra.
Really.
Who was your
loved it.
pianist?
Marty Schwartz.
Yeah.
Martin Schwartz.
Marty Schwartz did a wonderful job.
He's a wonderful man. I just love the guy.
And
he's great.
You guys were great. We had a lot of wonderful music.
There was some great stuff out there. That was really good.
A lot of people came, and everyone felt a sense of community, and people have been calling me and telling me that, writing me about it, and it's really wonderful. And we have that, you know this every Friday night at the Sugarloaf at the Cancun Inn. We try to promote the same spirit. Last week we had 35 singers.
That's phenomenal. That is unbelievable.
And people are starting to realize that we can have a great sense of community if people just show up.
Yeah, well, and we should, with the available connectivity, we should all be able to participate, regardless, of what your politic is.
Well, that's
just
the
to
point.
be a part of the community.
It is the point that these things, and they don't have an admission fee, and you don't have any litmus test.
Right.
You have to be of a certain belief. People come together, and beliefs can change. Contact and conversation is the best way that people can grow in their beliefs everyone. I'm not talking about one side or the other. You get to know each other. You have a pretty clear sense of de-demonizing people. I think that's what I like to refer to it. There's a lot of demonization. Again, everybody. And one of the things that's the most interesting, and you and I haven't talked about this, but it's something that is really current in my mind. There's an assault on religion that's going on in many ways in the culture. And sometimes religious people are not the most tolerant themselves. Mm-hmm. But, there was a religious exemption for vaccination in New York. And Bobby Kennedy and I fought to preserve it in 2019. And I didn't do that because I have a particular view that you shouldn't be vaccinated or you should be vaccinated. Bobby's much more involved with the vaccination skepticism. That wasn't what motivated me. What motivated me is I felt you should have a choice. It's your body, it's your set of beliefs, and in order to maintain a separation between church and state, you have to be able to act out your religious views. Right. And in that process, I started defending a very conservative judge from Poughkeepsie named Frank Mora. His case is well known. And Frank Mora submitted an application as a judge to be exempted from the vaccination. This has nothing to do with the children being removed from a vaccine exemption, because OCA, the Office of Court Administration, had this exemption. And they gave it to very few people. And this man is deeply religious. And part of his religion is not to take into the human body, a healthy human body, things that are unnecessary. That's how he understands spiritual principle for him. Don't ingest into the human body things that are harmful or may be harmful.
And of course, vaccines
can be.
Okay. Yeah.
So, he wrote this whole statement and all of this, and you know what happened? He was denied, and then he was ostracized. Now they're trying to get rid of him as a judge.
Who's trying to get rid of him?
The Office of Court Administration and the Judicial Misconduct Commission and all this, and it's huge. It's been going on for 5 years. And, I don't agree with Frank about two things.
Yeah, right, exactly.
No, I don't. And I don't necessarily agree with him about that, but that's not the point.
Right, he has the right.
Right, and so we keep subjecting other people in this very judgmental way. You may have, which you do, you and your wife, I've seen you do this. Before you eat, you bless your food, you say a prayer.
Absolutely.
You don't say to the people at the table, you have to do the same thing. You do it.
Right.
She does it. This is out of your belief.
Correct.
Should someone judge that? Should someone say anything about that? No. 100% no. But we're in a position where these things elicit some judgment. And that's just way off. It's just way off. And I think we have to, as progressive people, and a lot of progressive people are engaging in this judgmental process, in my view, way off. We have to respect people who have these feelings and views, whatever they may be. They're not hurting other people. So,
well, they're inherent in the freedom of expression, and that's in the First Amendment, correct?
Well, the First Amendment protects you against government interference, but it doesn't necessarily protect you against the intolerance from individuals. And what I'm saying is, as individuals, we have to broaden our ability to be tolerant and not continue. We just went through this issue with water metering in Chester, which is still an issue, and I've spoken about it on my 30 by 30. And the town of Chester board is 2 weeks ago, they're faced with this issue of should they require everyone to have internal digital metering. And for some people who are electromagnetic sensitive, that's dangerous. okay, so I got up at the meeting and I said, look, for
Is this
some,
like people with pacemakers and things
yeah,
like that?
and there are people who just have sensitivity to
Okay.
electromagnetism, and when you increase the quantum in their environment,
Right.
it could threaten them. Now, it may not be you, it may not be me, it may not be him, it may not be anybody you know even, but there are people who have this issue. So simply continue their analog metering and allow them to live their lives out, and don't impose this on them. It's not necessary.
Right.
Well, the board members, I hope, will adopt that view, but it was interesting how skeptical they were about understanding choice.
Well, what would be the major problem for them? That there's disparity between the digital referencing and the analog?
No, there's no known disparity. The measurements, you've been doing analog
It's the
measuring
same.
for 50 years, right?
Exactly.
So, there's not an issue about its accuracy. Over, a large population, there may be efficiencies gained through the digital method, and I'm not arguing about that, but 99% of the people are going to retain the digital method once it's started, and maybe 1%. It goes back to the religious exemption for school children in New York. Do you know what percentage of children at the most ever took advantage of it? 2.5%, okay, at the very most in the whole state. The medical exemption, 1% or less. You had far more people who took neither exemption and just didn't vaccinate.
Yeah,
because they don't want to vaccinate, not because they have any religious or medical reason.
Right.
So it's just befuddling. And I do strongly support New York going back to having a religious exemption for children. I think it's important. And that's not because I'm vaccine skeptical. It's not because I don't think they're efficacious. They may be. But it's because there's a group of people who have religious scruples and beliefs, and we have to respect them. And we're not based on the science of herd immunity in any way imperiling ourselves.
No.
We're not. So a lot of these issues that we have polarization on, and this is what I'm really addressing, can be resolved, and that's why I've always adopted this seat at the table philosophy, by people actually thinking about others first.
Exactly.
Don't just think about yourself and your own opinion. You have an opinion, fine.
Right.
But there are other opinions.
Exactly.
So...
Well, there's an expression for that. Opinions are like, everybody's got one.
Yeah. But the point is, everybody's got one, but we have a hard time respecting it. And we want to elevate ours and make it the only game in town. And some people say to me, well, you're a civil rights lawyer. We have civil rights laws. Should we have civil rights laws? Why should we have civil rights laws? Why should you have to treat a person who's disabled fairly? But see, it's a totally different argument, because when you start discriminating against people based on their age or their skin color or their gender, you're limiting their life opportunities. You're limiting their choice. That's why we have anti-discrimination laws.
Right.
Now, yeah, it might impair your ability to discriminate,
Right.
but why should you have that ability in areas of intercourse, general intercourse? You shouldn't. Now, does that tell you who your friend has to be? No. We don't say you have to have 4 friends who are of a different group. Have whatever friends you want. But in the public sphere...
Well, is that the principle of DEI that everybody's so bent out of shape about? Is that there's a prescription for the actual ratio of people that you have?
But that's not what it is. I mean, that may be someone's misinterpretation of it, but that's not what it means. I mean, we have institutions...
I'm afraid that is their interpretation of it,
It is.
and that's why they take such exception to it when it in fact has nothing to do with it.
Well, I think part of the issue is they think they're being disadvantaged. And, we know that there are many people who are very bitter because they feel that they applied for a test or a job, they didn't get it because someone of a different group who was inferior to them got it. There's all that thinking that permeates the society. And, we don't have a perfect meritocracy,
Right.
in any way.
Right.
When I went to Harvard Law School, I always used to think to myself, people think it's such a big deal, but 3/4 of the population have their hands tied behind their back and can't compete for it anyway.
Exactly.
So you're winning a race where many people aren't in the competition.
Exactly.
Don't think so highly of yourself, in other words.
Exactly.
And we have to recognize that qualifications for specific jobs often are elusive, and they're not so made in concrete. And we have to think that one of the qualifications is an ability to relate to other people, to other cultures, understand things. I've been focusing on police responses in my professional work, and one of the things that's noteworthy we had a baby, an 8-month-old baby, die on LaRue Road last week. And my wife and I stumbled upon those who were trying to care for her, essentially as she was dying, and they were on the road pleading for help. And we stopped the car, and my wife started giving her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and chest compressions and the like. And one of the things that was apparent was when the police arrived, and I'm not blaming them, none of them could communicate with this family because the family was Hispanic.
Oh,
my daughter Arcadia was there, who happens to speak Spanish. Thank God she was able to speak with them and helped translate. But you know, if you don't have some level of diversity in your public servants, this is the kind of situation that develops. And it was really tragic because you needed immediate response. You needed to know what happened, and you couldn't communicate. So there are functional, practical reasons why supporting diversity matters. And it shouldn't be seen as a threat. It should be seen as a welcome. You know, when we have karaoke, we don't say you have to sing a particular genre of song, do we?
Exactly.
Isn't it better when we have 15 people and they're all singing something essentially out of their traditions or their whatever they want?
Interest is right.
So it's all interesting. It's not really what being county executives directly about, but what this is relevant to for me is the spirit you bring to the task, the values that you have. That's why we're really discussing some of this today, because we're at a point 2 months before the election where people need, and hopefully will try to get to know candidates. The people who advise me, the professional consultants tell me, Michael, you're speaking far too long. You're 30 by 30s. They're 2.5 minutes long. People have a 5-second attention span or a 20-second attention span. And I say to myself, they may be right about some people, but I'm interested in giving those who want to know enough of a sense of me, if they can't meet me personally and I don't have the pleasure of meeting them, to get to know who I am, and beyond cartoons and stereotypes and this and that. And then they could make an informed judgment. Is this the kind of person with the kind of values that I can relate to? If not, If not, okay. But at least you're not just shooting in the dark, and you're not basing something on 10 seconds. So that's why I appreciate you doing this Fridays, because we have a chance to converse a little bit about things that might not be.
Well, it certainly helps me to understand exactly where you're coming from and exactly what you're up against in this whole campaign, and I think that your efforts are really noble efforts, regardless of the outcome. That the fact that it's been presenced in the conversation in a way that opens up the conversation to something other than what's been there, which has been by and large completely exclusive. And it's a much more inclusive campaign and a much more inclusive idea to be, to have this dialogue, to have this interaction.
Well, one of the things that people have said to me, and it's very troubling to tell you the truth, and it's reflective of the fear of reprisal, whether that fear is ever expressed in the sense of someone says, if you do X, we're going to do Y, if it's that direct, or if it's just in the air.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people, we don't have any debates scheduled yet. I ask why. A lot of people are frightened to come forward to even schedule a debate. They think that's some act of resistance. And if that's really the state of our democracy in a county 50 miles out of New York City, it's pretty telling. They see Donald Trump interfering in the mayor's election in New York City, trying to get Eric Adams to be the ambassador to Saudi Arabia. I mean, whatever it is. But I think that there's a degree of cynicism and a degree of inevitability that has to be fought back very hard against. I don't feel it's inevitable what will happen in 2 months. I really don't. I think there may be a massive blue turnout. I think many Republicans may not be interested. I think people many are fed up with whatever the status quo is. And the fact that so many of these individuals are basically apologists for Donald Trump and his philosophies and policies.
At best, they're apologists.
Well, apologists in the sense, they don't even speak one way or the other. That I think if you're in that party and you're not speaking, you have some responsibility to stand up and say, well, I'm not, don't count me in with that. So I don't think there should be any doom about any of it. I think, as you said, we should state as clearly as we can what we do believe in and why.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
give people an opportunity to respond, however they choose to respond. we have gun violence going on all over the place again, and it surges, and then it seems to retreat for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden we start having these incidents again all over the place. And we haven't been able to adopt any common sense, and they are common sense proposals.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't run us under a Supreme Court precedent as far as I can read it, but we still have people who, at the mere mention of taking weapons from those who are deemed mentally ill, they go crazy, they think there's some major intrusion, and whatever else. So, I think we need to have these conversations, we need to do them fearlessly, and be willing to listen, but also be willing to put out what we think is true. So.
Well, I'm more than happy to do this. For me, it opens a whole portal of interest in the community and in the county. And I have this whole thing about Orange County, and just if you, in the geographic location of Orange County, and its distal, it is the center. It's like the hub of the entire Northeast. It has that potential to have that kind of influence. Yeah. And I think that it's really important that the people that are here doing the work are clean, are concise, are specific, and are open about their communication and the clarity with which they're operating.
Yeah. Well, the last thing we might want to discuss is an event you and I participated in jointly on Monday, Labor Day.
Oh,
we shouldn't forget it was Labor Day. And Organized Labor did an event over in Poughkeepsie, and I was urging for an event in Orange County. They didn't plan any event in Orange County, even though we have all these very serious labor issues in Orange County, right? And I said, well, we're going to have an event, and you're going to be invited to come, and you may not be the sponsors of it. I'll be the sponsor of it, but somebody's got to sponsor it and get people together to focus on the issues that organized labor faces in the county. And they had 75 people in Poughkeepsie, all the unions, 75 people, politicians. We had 225 people with no notice,
right here,
right?
Yeah.
And it was gratifying to see that many people come out, and they spoke. Individuals from organized labor did speak, and they had things to say that were important, and everyone should know some of those things. I mean, I'll just briefly tick off 3 of them. We had Crystal Run here for a generation, and Crystal Run became very profitable and sold out. They sold out to a company from Minnesota.
Is that Garnett?
Optum.
Oh, Optum, right.
And Optum came in, and by the time Optum had come in, 9 units associated with Crystal Run had separately voted to organize unions. Crystal Run was in the process of selling, and now Optum comes in, and they essentially refused to negotiate. So you have all these workers in the healthcare industry in this county who've agreed they want to be in a union, and management basically says, "Nyeh." And there's no National Labor Relations Board to enforce the requirement of negotiating. So where are these people going? So that's one thing. And I know there's been talk about a strike, and that would be catastrophic for our county, and I've said very clearly, as county executive, I will bring Optum here to this table with the union, and we will negotiate. And we're not going to have them functioning in this county refusing to follow national labor relations law. Then we have the whole situation with Amazon trying to radically expand its footprint in our county when we know that with the robotics that they're planning, their OSHA safety record will get worse and worse.
Absolutely.
Because the robotics are going at a speed that from the people I've talked to in the shop, people cannot keep up. And it's creating this injury plague. So do we want this? Organized labor has to take a stand on that. Sure, I understand you want jobs, but you shouldn't want jobs building anything. Okay? Then we have our CSEA, which is our public employees workers who work for the county, and they're interested and concerned about wage equity, which is an important issue. Both wage equity within different classifications in the county, but also private and public.
Sure.
So they asked for a study. It's part of the contract. We're doing a study, February of 24. We're a year and a half later or more, they don't have the study. Right. Wow. They went to a public meeting in May asking for the study, and it's not available. So, most people, I get it, are concerned about their own lives, their own children, their own spouses, their own parents. I mean, I get that. And, Lee and I had 7 children, and they're gone in the sense that they aren't living with us generally at the house. Right. We're not with them every day. We have perhaps more time than another family might have to think about these things. But I think it's really important that some people think about the broader issues in the community.
Absolutely.
So thanks for a few minutes.
Hey, thank you. God bless you, man. Have a great day.